Hey guys, this is Jeff Bell, founder of the nonprofit A2A Alliance. You are listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast with Sean and Kyle, two amazing dudes.
Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey everybody, welcome back. Season 3 of the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Holy cow, Sean, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
All right, good deal. Yeah, I'm excited for this new season. You know, like I said, last episode, season 1 was like 2 years long. But, you know, we've fallen into a groove and we've got a good schedule going, and I'm excited for this new season.
Yeah, it's going to be great. In fact, we've got some really cool stuff to share, beyond our own little ideas between you and I. We've also got some incredible conversations in store for listeners this season. We're going to hear from Laura Bloom. She's the CEO of the International Ehlers-Danlos Society. She's got the coolest accent. We're also going to talk to 9-year-old Dana with Cookies for Cures, and her mom will join us, and we'll talk about what they do and how they have raised over $100,000 for research, basically from baking cookies.
Yeah, pretty amazing story.
Right? We're also going to talk to James Valentine. He's a lawyer in D.C., or from D.C. We're going to talk to him about his work in the government space and what he does to support patient advocacy groups, to name a few. There's a whole lot more coming at our listeners for season 3. So definitely looking forward to sharing a lot of great interviews and just different conversations with everybody. Kyle, tell us about your, we both just had like a month or two off. What's new? How are the holidays? Bring us up to speed on your life.
Yeah, holidays were great. One of the biggest changes in my life right now, as our listeners know, Friedreich's ataxia is a progressive disease, and so that basically means it gets worse over time. And in my life, I was diagnosed at 17. I transitioned to a wheelchair, and recently everyone knows that I transitioned to a power wheelchair, scooter type thing, and it's super awesome. I love it. However, I wasn't able to get it into my van by myself, so I bought a wheelchair ramp van. And I actually purchased it from someone else in the FA community. And it's been really, really awesome just to, push a button, open the door, and just wheel right in. Like, oh, my gosh.
Not have to, hang on to half the van and manhandle your chair and struggle. Yeah.
And just, sitting inside being like, all right, I got to go to the store, or I got to go to work, whatever. And I don't even think twice about the effort it's going to take me to get into the car anymore. And I don't think I realized that was a thing until it was gone. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a relief to not have that be an issue anymore, you know?
Would you say it saved you time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If
you compare, line up with your manual chair, you got to stand up, brace yourself, open the door, throw your chair in, and then kind of hobble to the driver's seat. So I didn't know, if, getting out there, waiting for the ramp to come down, stuff like that, is it equal or, what?
I'm still, perfecting my process, right? And I noticed that I click the button before I leave the house, right?
It's certainly a lot easier, probably, huh?
Yeah, and then the ramp comes down, and I get in, and then I've got to transfer into the driver's seat. So I wouldn't say that it saves time, but it's just like the stress factor or I just don't think twice,
Yeah.
So,
well, congratulations on the van. I'm glad to know it's making life a little bit easier for you.
Yeah. And so, Sean, why don't you give our listeners a little update? I know everybody's curious about the status of your injury and your mobility. So how's that going? So recovery and stuff.
Recovery has been fine. It's been a very slow and long process, but I definitely feel great, getting stronger every day. My workplace, my employer has been incredibly supportive and over the top accommodating, just beyond what they're required to do, which is always incredible because, they could cut their losses, but they've chosen not to. So that speaks volumes to them. That's been a relief for me. The entire time I was home, I was able to focus on healing and recovery and not worry about income or employment and all those things. So that's been fabulous. I'm actually returning to work any day now. Like any day I'm going. In fact, I've already started kind of paying attention to emails and slowly getting into the mix, and I'll be back in the office any day. So yeah, overall it's great. Things are feeling fine, working fine, and just probably moving a little bit slower, having to be a little more conscious of getting in and out of bed and, in and out of their shower. Things that we all probably do without thinking about.
Right.
I've certainly had to spend a little more mental energy getting focused on those things before I just start moving.
Right. What about driving? I know that driving is a big part of getting to work for you, obviously, and so how's that going?
It's been nerve-wracking, and I actually haven't driven alone yet. Started recently kind of loading in and out of the car just to practice, but I've always had somebody hanging out with me just in case. So that's really the big factor as to why I'm not back at work yet today. It's just the safety in terms of getting there and back. My leg feels great, and there's certainly strength to press on the pedals and the brakes. The issue is the reflex time. It's taken me a little bit longer to get that leg moved.
Yeah.
Because a little bit of discomfort and a lot of weakness. So, it's still a little ahead of me, but I'm getting there.
It sounds like you're making progress. That's for sure. So rad. Yeah, good deal.
So beyond those things, Kyle, we broke into 2020. I don't know about you, but I think back to the days of high school, late 90s.
Yeah,
unsure that we're actually going to survive past Y2K.
Exactly.
So here we are 20 years later. It's 2020. All these things are going on in our world. A lot of people, we talked about it before, always set out with New Year's resolutions and goals and whatnot. Is there anything in your world or in your mind that you've set out for 2020, or maybe you've set some goals or whatever? Give us something for the new year.
I want to keep my apartment clean.
Oh, and that'd be good. That's a good thing.
That seems really simple, and I know you're like a clean and tidy person, so it's probably not a big deal to you, but I'm not really. But I'm not that person. We're not the same, right?
Right.
But I really noticed that like I'm happier and I get more done when my apartment's clean. Like, it's so fundamental. It like feeds into everything, right?
Wow.
And so if I can stay focused on that this year, I think it'll help me get more done that isn't necessarily like just cleaning my apartment, but it just kind of feeds into everything. You know?
I feel like I've heard psychologists talk about the clutter in our environment actually has an impact on the clutter in our minds or emotions or, the heaviness of what's going on in life. I feel like I've just heard that and read that. Obviously, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know the science behind that, but...
no, I can totally relate. Like, when I get home from work and my apartment's a mess, it's a way different mental state, right? Than when I get home, my apartment's clean, and I'm like, oh, I can do whatever I want right now. I can work on the podcast, or I can watch a movie, or I can read a book, whatever, So... So that's my goal.
That's cool. I'd like to know, I went to a place last summer, and I was concerned for a moment. I thought we might need an interview. Like, I was ready to call your mother. So I'm glad to hear that you're being a little more intentional.
Yeah, well, the other thing is I got a new vacuum, and it's cordless, and it's super light, and so I like actually sort of enjoy vacuuming.
Oh no!
I feel so dumb saying all this because it's such a 12-year-old thing, but no, this is what I'm doing.
That's funny.
So, Sean, what about you? Is there like one thing that you think you would like to commit to this year, or something that you've been thinking about?
Yeah, there is. It's kind of a repeat of last year. I do want to mention a YouTube video for yours, so I'll come back to it. For me, last year I told everybody I'm going to read 20 books. Reading has never really been a strong suit of mine. I've always enjoyed reading self-help and leadership kind of books. But in the last couple of years, I've been trying to build that habit out a little more. Last year, I committed to 20 books. Through my count on Audible and my list of reading, I only completed 14 books. So definitely a little ways to go, but that's more than I've ever read in 1 year.
14,
so I feel good.
That's a pretty good sum, yeah. And so does that include like children's books and like, I don't know, everything? I
don't think I read any kids' books last year.
Okay, got it.
But I would argue you've talked about one of your favorite books and authors.
Yeah.
What is it?
What do you do with an idea?
So that book, I don't know, 20 really big pages, one or two sentences on each one. Yeah,
exactly.
I feel like I would count that as a book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sold as a book. It's marketed as a book. So that was the 2018 book for me. So I can't count. It's not 15 for last year. But I would count that as a book.
Yeah, I would count those because it's still like consuming a concept that like has the potential to make a big impact on you or on the way you do things, right? And so maybe it's just like ingesting ideas
well, I think that, and then also taking the time to expose yourself to a new concept or a new idea or a different way of thinking. I would also argue that daily devotional type books are also counted as long as you read everything, like cover to cover. Like, sure, maybe skip the preface and the acknowledgments at the end or the beginning, but like you've got to read every chapter or every daily
right.
I don't know, devotional? Is that what they're called? I don't know.
Exercise, whatever it is.
If you read every single one, then I certainly count that.
So tell me this. What about this? If you listen to a book twice, does that count as two?
No, absolutely not. No. No way. If that were the case, I've just listened to the same book 20 times. I'd pick a short one, and I'd be done in like a week.
Just leave it on when you're like cooking dinner. Don't even really listen, and just
I think it's helpful to read a book multiple times, but that doesn't count. It's going to be a fresh, new read.
Got it.
What do they call it in the website world? When people visit your page, there's
a repeat listener.
Well, you've got a repeat visitor, and then they call a new visitor or something. But I'm pretty sure it's not called new visitor. Anyway,
I don't know.
Neither one of us are webmasters, obviously. So moving on.
Yeah, Sean, what do we want to talk about today? For the meat of our episode, I think it's something that you've been thinking about lately, and you brought up, and I thought it was really good. So why don't you introduce the topic?
Before we do that, I'm going to go back to the YouTube video I mentioned. When you were talking about, keeping your room clean or your apartment clean, I immediately think about the Navy SEAL who gave a commencement speech at Texas University. It may have been Texas A&M. I'm actually not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard it. I did a quick search on YouTube. Collectively, this video has over 20 million views. And the whole premise was starting your day with making your bed. So I'm going to encourage our listeners, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look it up. It's Make Your Bed speech, or Make Your Bed. I guarantee you it's easy to find. Admiral William McRaven. So go find his speech. We'll link it in the show notes too. It's pretty powerful.
I would also recommend the book. There's a really short book where he shares some stories, almost exactly what he was. I mean, the same concept as what he was saying in that speech, but someone gave me that book and it was really good too.
Written by him or authored by him? Okay. Maybe I'll add that to my 20 for this year. I didn't realize he had a book.
Yeah, and you can. Cool. It's not very long either. It's more of like just him sharing a few thoughts and stories than like a full on like book. Yeah,
those are my favorite kind of books when I'm trying to read 20 of them. In fact, I'll just share that if any of our listeners decide to, maybe do a book, please don't do novels. Like I don't have time for those. Anyway, back to the meat, the main point. Kyle, you and I were talking, and what I think might be valuable for our listeners is this concept of thinking twice before you react, or maybe looking internally before you react. I don't know the best way to explain it, so I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
For me, talking about the injury in the wheelchair, I've obviously been exposed to a different mentality or a different way of life every day than I ever have before, right? I've never had to use a wheelchair, so I don't know what that experience is like. Whereas you, or many of our other listeners, have lived many years, if not their whole life, in a wheelchair, right? They get it.
Right.
Well, for me, being in a wheelchair, especially as a new thing, it's opened my eyes to the way society works to an extent. On one hand, I have found people to be a lot more helpful when I'm in a wheelchair than when I'm stumbling through the airport. People don't approach me and ask me if I've been drinking. They don't pull me out of line or, none of that stuff. Instead, it's, you're in a chair. Let me grab that door. Like, they don't say that, but the reaction is very just automatic, right? Helpfulness. Right. Well, on the other side, I've also realized that a lot of people are just straight up inconsiderate. maybe not on maybe not rude. They're being rude, maybe unknowingly. And one of those moments was cruising down the street near my apartment. I went out one day. The first day I decided to go out on my own. I took my wheelchair, pushed it to Starbucks, or rolled myself to Starbucks. Had to cross 2 streets to get there. Excuse me. Well, I'm approaching the crosswalk at one corner, and I'm like 2 seconds away from hitting the curb, right? The crosswalk start. And a car pulls up and immediately stops, looks at me, and goes. Doesn't wait, doesn't give me first of all, I didn't have room to go. They pulled up so far, the curb cut was kind of blocked.
Blocked,
right?
Yeah.
It would have been a lot more work for me to get down there and then go up a little grade to get in front of them.
Right. Yeah.
So they quickly saw me, saw no cars coming, and took off. So everything was fine. It wasn't a close call, but I realized the anxiety I felt because of it. I immediately thought, oh, wow, jerk. I mean, you could have waited. You could have let me cross.
Right, totally.
And I would have felt more comfortable knowing that you saw me and were willing to wait. But I also immediately thought, I've done that without ever thinking about it. And so I began to internalize that and say, okay, there's definitely room for me to think twice about the way I react and the way I actually move through life. So I don't know the best words to pull from this, but instead of myself in the wheelchair, instead of being upset and pissed off and going to Twitter and, oh, crazy drivers, actually what I feel like I've been challenged with lately is more of a, okay, that is crazy, that is inconsiderate, maybe rude, but do I do that? And if I do, what can I do and how can I be aware of that and actually not do that anymore? Be a little more conscious of others, if you will.
Totally, yeah. I think that our first reaction, and all of us can attest to this, that our first reaction is to feel bad or animosity toward that other person, right? In so many situations we have that. Our immediate knee-jerk reaction is to be like, what a jerk.
Yeah.
But if we take a second and just be like, all right, internalize it and be like, all right, no one got hurt, nothing's wrong, and how can I learn from that to realize how I react in that same situation if I'm sitting in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I still thought, wow, what a jerk. That knee-jerk reaction is still there. But instead of being so worked up and let that, affect my day, I've just felt that I need to ask myself, do I, it's a self-reflection, if you will. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I don't ever want to be guilty of doing that.
Yeah.
Another thing, and really what caused me to really get on this train of thought going into this year. In fact, that's kind of my, I wouldn't call it a resolution, but the frame of mind that I'm wanting to go through or move forward with is, am I guilty? Do I do that? One of the things that really put this on the forefront for me is being injured and, stuck in Philadelphia for a month and rehab and all these little things. Well, not to make anybody feel bad or terrible or anything, a lot of people actually said things that they never followed through on. Whether it was, we're going to, bring you food, or I'm going to call you on this day, or I'm going to come hang out, all these little things. And it wasn't like, huge commitments that people fell through on. They were just little things. But I realized when, in my position, when that's all you have to look forward to, because you can't go work and you can't just come and go as you please. Those are big deals. They're not small passive little suggestions. They're actually, I took them as commitments. And a lot of things come up, kids, work, whatever it may be, that kept people from following through. And instead of being upset and mad and, pissed off at the world or those people, I began to realize, okay, that's actually kind of hurtful, but I also know I've done that. And so what can I do and how can I move forward and not be the person that does that to somebody else?
Right, yeah. And just like putting yourself in their shoes too, totally. Right? And like, how would I react if I was being pulled on from work and I had other commitments that obviously I was putting above my commitment with Sean, and and so a lot of times it's kind of a prioritization thing, and a lot of times nothing is more important than anything else, but we put ourselves in a position where you have to choose one over the other. But anyway, I guess the point is that, if we think about what the other person might be, the situation the other person might be dealing with, I think that really helps us. And then we can modify what we do in the future so we don't do that, right?
Sure. Well, but I do want to say I wrote about this in a column. People know I write a weekly column for Friedrichs Ataxia News. And the argument I made in this particular post was not so much that the other person has stuff going on. What I would argue is that no matter who you are and no matter what you have going on, you have an obligation or a responsibility to follow through. Now, that doesn't mean you keep your commitment and you do what you said you were going to do. I get it. Things happen. What I would argue is that there's a responsibility, I feel, for at least following through. In fact, I even talked about this randomly with my mom recently. Something totally different. If I tell you I'm just making up a story, okay? Kyle, I'm gonna come wash your new van next Saturday.
Yep.
Or next weekend.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome.
I'm down.
But let's say something comes up, I'm out of town, I can't make it happen. The weekend comes and goes. We never talk about it.
Oh my! I
the disservice isn't the fact that I couldn't come wash your van. The disservice is that I never followed through. Instead, and when I say follow through, I don't mean actually doing it, but I mean communicating. Simply just calling and saying, hey, you know what, the kids are sick, or hey, work's taking me out of town, or hey, my flight was canceled. Whatever the case is, having the sense of responsibility to actually follow through with saying, hey, I know I said I would do this, but I can't. It's taking ownership of what you committed to. And my whole argument is in that post titled, Words Matter, So Speak Carefully. And I feel like I'm rambling, but I'll move on. How many times have you said you're going to do a thing, or you're going to call a friend, or show up, or go to that party, and you fully never intend to actually do it? You're like, let's hang out. But in the back of your like, we're never going to hang out. Well, when you say, let's do it, and I do this all the time until recently, I feel like that's unfair. You're doing yourself and the other party a disservice, even though maybe you all know it's never going to happen. I'm wanting to be more careful to just say yes or no up front. Like, if I'm not feeling that event, I'm probably going to say, oh, you know what, I don't think I'll make it, but thanks for the invite. I want to address it right now, not linger and then fail to follow through, if that makes sense. There's like 14 points here.
I think it's a good thing to constantly be assessing these things and seeing how they play out in our own heads, in our own lives, because we can easily, like, not think about this type of stuff, and everyone around us is thinking something about us, and we don't even realize it, right? But if we're constantly trying to see these things and understand how we feel about certain situations, then we can change it in ourselves and be a better person because of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's certainly, I think that's probably the lesson, right? How can you make a difference in that arena, whether it's in yourself or with others? What can you do to move the needle forward or make improvements in that realm? Which is certainly where I'm at right now. So, yeah. Definitely. There's always room for assessing or kind of reflection, right? And we've talked about that before. I think in one of my favorite authors, John Maxwell, he talks about that. Always reflect. And in fact, he's one that where he's credited with this idea of experience is never the greatest teacher. It's evaluation of your experiences that
absolutely
cause you to make change or to teach you things that could be different or should be different. So that's always been a favorite concept of mine. So all of this to say, folks, we as a whole need to reflect on what we're doing to contribute to certain actions or ways of life and do our part in taking ownership, responsibility, and moving forward in a way that we think is best for the community as a whole, I suppose.
I agree. Yeah. So. Good stuff.
Beautiful. Well, that's all the arguments I have for today.
All right. Nice. And people can check out Sean's column on fanewstoday.com. Is that what it is?
Friedrichs Ataxianews.com. And we'll link that in the show notes too.
Sounds good. So, Sean, one of our things that we want to do this year is be more grateful or exercise that muscle, I think. And so we want to put that into action on the show. And how are we going to do that?
Well, the idea we have right now is to actually, into the microphone, share thank you notes. We want to share a couple with you today. We'll read a few sentences of things we actually wrote expressing gratitude to someone or something. We believe that simply reflecting on things that we're grateful for helps us live beyond the negative circumstances in our lives. In fact, I think all of our readers have probably seen Instagram posts or social media things of that nature, right? The attitude of gratitude, if you will. So that's what we're going to do today. We've both written thank you notes to some different parties in our lives, and we're going to share with you those thank you notes with the ultimate encouragement for you, our listeners, to go and do the same thing, whether it be a text or a letter or an email or, a snail mail note. Share a thank you today or sometime this week in order to reframe maybe where your mind might be.
So I'm going to start, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
mine's
absolutely.
pretty simple. So a bunch of people raise funds for Raditaxi every year, and if you raise $750 or more, you get an official Raditaxi jersey. And so at the Philadelphia ride, happened in October, there's at every ride, there's a number of people who don't necessarily reach their fundraising minimum by the day of the ride, so they get their jersey shipped to them afterwards. And I was doing that the other day, And I could just throw the jersey in there, but I was like, it really made me like think like how grateful I am for it. It's so easy to take it for granted. We have so many people participating in the ride and so much money being raised, which is incredible, but every single person putting their effort in. Anyway, I put a note in the packages that I sent to these 5 people that received their jersey the other day, and it simply says, "Thank you for your awesome fundraising effort in 2019. See you at the ride." You know, it's as simple as that, but I really took the time to sort of reflect and put pen to paper. I mean, how often do we do that? Actually send a physical thank you note.
Yep.
So
I think there's a lot of power in them because they're just not super common today.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm a fan. In fact, I've been doing some thank you notes myself, and in the past we've talked about, we did a thank you note challenge a couple of years ago, so sort of kind of aligning with that again. My thank you note is actually to a mutual friend of ours. Her name is Felicia, and here's what I would write today if I were putting this in a card form. Felicia, you showed up in ways I never would have expected. Thank you for your company, the food, the Target runs, and all the cappuccinos. More importantly, thank you for helping communicate with the medical staff during that whole process. As our friend Paul said, you're the best emergency contact ever. So that goes to Felicia, who was incredibly helpful and most supportive during my injury out in your neighborhood. Yeah, she just showed up in ways I never expected. So Felicia, thank you.
Awesome.
So I would challenge our listeners to do that. Think of something you're thankful for, maybe a person, and express gratitude one way or another, whether you record a voice memo or an episode or actually write the note or an email. I really do believe that being grateful helps us move forward in positive ways in our lives. So, thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com and please subscribe on the iTunes. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.